Hi everybody, I'm Tabitha and I've read 5 more books. So I don't always drop new book reviews on Tuesday. I try to always put new videos on Tuesdays. It's not always book reviews, but you know what? Everything else in the world right now feels a little chaotic and a little uncomfortable, and books are my happy place. So I'm just going to do the book reviews and talk about books. If you're looking for my rating scale, remember you can follow the helpful timestamps in the description that'll let you jump to the rating scale, which you will find now at the end of the video. You can also use those helpful timestamps to jump to any of the books I'm about to talk about, or just stick around and watch the whole thing. Ready? Let's go. The first book I read in the month of June is Funnier by James Patterson and Chris Grabenstein. This is a middle grade age category humor book. It was published in 2013 by Arrow, and it is 368 pages. Your synopsis. Jamie Grimm is back in this sequel to the hilarious book Funny. He still has big plans to become the planet's funniest kid, and he won't let being in a wheelchair stop him. Follow Jamie's journey to the semifinals in Boston and find out if he has what it takes to be the planet's funniest kid. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first one is I felt like this had more tired jokes. Not all of them, to be sure, but some. I think I remember the first book in this series having a lot more original jokes. This one just felt done before, which was unfortunate. It didn't make me laugh out loud as much, and I was expecting more. The second thing I can say I didn't really like about this one is that it didn't have a lot of surprises. I think you go into this book expecting the outcome to be a certain thing, and then you get it. That's not to say that there's anything inherently wrong with that. In fact, especially in middle grade books, having an expectation that you meet isn't really a bad thing. I would have just liked a few more twists and turns in this one so that it's not always going to be perfectly the way you expect it to be in life. The third thing I can say I wasn't crazy about in this one is name dropping. You know how I feel about that. If you've watched any reviews on this channel, name dropping irritates me for some reason. For this one, I can say that the name dropping they do is famous comedians. So it makes sense because I'm sure Jamie would be excited about these comedians, but it just felt like too much for the reader. So what did I like about this one? The first thing I liked about this one, and it's the same thing I liked about the first one, is Jamie himself. He continues to be a great character with a ton of personality, and he has an extraordinarily wonderful outlook on life. This kid doesn't take himself too seriously, and he honestly is a genuinely good kid. I love him as a role model. I love him as a character. He is why I keep reading these books. Second thing I can say I liked about this one is, again, friendship is at the center stage of this book. Just like in the first book, Jamie and his group of friends are a shining example of what it looks like to be a real friend. They are definitely friendship goals on a real level. The third thing I can say I liked about this one is that this one tackles some serious stuff. I enjoyed seeing serious things pop up in Jamie's life that had to be handled. It's done with a good lesson, it's done with good purpose, and I feel like the way Jamie handles things is just a great learning opportunity. He is, like I said, a genuinely good kid, and so the way he handles things that come at him, even when they're serious, is awesome. It's a great learning tool and a good conversation starter. He has his priorities straight, and he accepts some big hardships, and that's important. Who do I think should read this one? Well, I think because this is middle grade, it's really geared towards 4th through 7th grade readers. So if you are or have a 4th through 7th grade reader in your house, specifically one who likes and appreciates a good joke, I definitely think you shouldn't miss out on this one. I also think if you happen to be a teacher of 4th through 7th grades, you're going to want to check this one out for lessons about perseverance and sticking to your dreams. It's got some great mini lessons built in, and it's a lot of humor, so you can't go wrong there. My rating? I gave this one 3 stars. This is a good book, and for the right reader, it's going to be exactly what they're looking for. So 3 stars for Funnier by James Patterson and Chris Grabenstein. The second book I read in the month of June was The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This is an adult age category horror novel originally published in 1959 by Viking Press, and it is 182 pages. Your synopsis. Dr. Montague is assembling a group to help gather evidence of a haunting at a notoriously haunted house known as Hill House. At first, the house seems content to merely frighten them, but what happens if the house decides to take one of them as its own? What didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say is that the scary moments for this one could have come sooner. That's asking a lot, I know, but it takes a bit to warm up to this one. Naturally, that adds to the character building, which makes the rest of the novel work, but at the beginning, I felt like I wanted more. The second thing I can say I wasn't crazy about for this one is that it's got longer sentences. To be fair, they are beautiful, but sometimes it takes a lot to get through it, and I was almost craving a short one to sort of break that up. It's a minor nitpicky thing, and by the time you get into the fast-paced horror, it didn't bother me. So what did I like about this one? The first thing, and this is a big one, the design and the explanation of the house is absolutely masterful. The mathematician in me adored the discussion of angles, and throughout the book, I felt like I could actually picture this entire setting. It was creepy and it was gothic in the best possible ways. The second thing I liked about this one is the ending. Oh, I loved this ending. It escalated quickly. My heart was racing and it just, it's a perfect ending. Exactly what you want in this kind of horror novel. The third thing I can say I liked about this one is it's the original. This book has shadows of other haunted house tales that you've heard before, but you cannot fault this one for that because this is the original. This book came out in 1959. It predates all those other books you can think of that might have borrowed some of the material for their titles. It still manages to have small details that give this house life and make it unique even for its genre. It is brilliant. It is terrifying. It's amazing. The next thing that I can say I like about this one, and I'm doing it without giving spoilers, even though this one came out in 1959 and you've probably read it, the narrator for this book is the right choice. At the risk of spoiling, again, a classic that's been out for a really long time that you've probably already interacted with, Eleanor is exactly the right character of the four characters. She is exactly the right one for us to be dropped into the head of. It's amazing watching as Eleanor actively changes the story as she spends more time in the house. If you read her first page, a page in the middle, and her last, she is a distractedly, amazingly different character. And that is the point. It makes the house a fifth character just by watching Eleanor's changes. It's amazing. Who do I think should read this one? If you are a fan of haunted house stories who has never read this one, you need to read it. It is amazing. It's the original. It's classic. If you are a fan of books with psychological leanings, the biggest bang in this one is definitely how the characters change even without realizing it just by being in the house. So if you like that psychological angle, you're going to love this one. My rating? I had to give this one 4 stars. It's a classic horror novel, and if you're a horror fan, you're going to enjoy it right from the beginning. So 4 stars for The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. The third book I read for the month of June was Immortal, Defiance by Laura Maybrooke. This one was independently published in 2019. It is an adult age category paranormal fantasy, and it is 378 pages. Your synopsis. Dulcia is an elven enchantress, a war heroine, and a dragon master. But a betrayal will put her in danger of an execution, unless she takes a second chance at life offered by a mysterious stranger. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, this first one is kind of, as it turns out looking at reviews, this is something a few people have mentioned. So I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you why I think it's okay. First of all, it's the flashbacks. So there are cases of flashbacks in this one, and because we're dealing with a fantasy setting that's not the same as ours and time isn't told the same, it's a little hard to keep track of when things happen. So why do I think you shouldn't necessarily let that bother you? Because you can piece it together. Knowing whether it was 6 years ago or a year ago isn't that big of a deal. You can piece it together, you get the story perfectly fine. So the flashbacks, they're a little annoying, but it's not a huge deal. Second thing I can say I wasn't crazy about is that this one has shadows of insta-love, which you know insta-love is a trope I do not like, but it only has shadows of it. It's like insta-love light. Why do I say that? Because this book has almost no romance in it at all, which is kind of cool, actually, that we were able to focus on the story and not need that romance. Part of that is because Dulcia is able to keep her head throughout this entire novel. She is very focused. She knows what she wants, and it's not falling in love. So really, what didn't I like is that Kraft needs to control himself, I guess. That's it. Third thing I can say I didn't like about this one, and this is not a big one, there were a few instances of telling me something instead of showing it to me. It only happened occasionally, and it seemed to be more on the war-focused scenes. Like, sometimes I felt like you were telling me when we were dealing with battles and war, which, honestly, is not that big of a deal, but it's worth mentioning. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing is Dulcea herself. I kind of hinted at this and what I didn't like, but Dulcea is a strong, focused character. She is in a tough situation when we first start the book, but I like the way she battled back mentally and physically. I like her focus on the tasks at hand. I like her disinterest in anything that's resembling romance at all. She is 100% focused on her people and her mission and what she needs to do, and I love her for that. The second thing I can say I liked about this one is dragons. Oh boy, do I love dragons. Dulcea is a dragon master, which means there are dragons in this story. I'd like to see more of the dragons in the sequel, but I'm glad they're in the story at all. There is a serious chance here to do some amazing things with dragons. The third thing I can say I like about this one is the fantasy world that you are dropped in is well created. This one has depth, it has customs, it has history. It's just well developed. I can tell that Laura Maybrooke probably has like folders and folders of details on this world somewhere in her house that she had to create in order to be able to write this book. It reads like a proper high fantasy, and her dedication to that genre really shows. Who do I think should read this one? If you are a high fantasy fan, you are going to love the epic details that are going on in this one. If you're a paranormal fan, yes, that's right. As implied by the Immortal in this title, we're meshing paranormal creatures with our fantasy. So you'll get elves, you'll get vampires, you're going to love the vampire, and of course you'll get some dragons. So if you're a paranormal fan, you should definitely be checking this one out. My rating? I gave this one 4 stars. This one delivers for high fantasy fans, and it is highly recommended for those readers. So 4 stars for Immortal Defiance by Laura Maybrooke. This next book had been on my TBR list the longest before this month started. The fourth book I read for the month of June was Before I Let Go by Marieke Nijkamp. This is a young adult age category mystery thriller. It was published in 2018 by Sourcebooks Fire, and it is 358 pages. This was the oldest book on my TBR before this month started. Your synopsis. Best friends Corey and Kyra were inseparable in their hometown of Lost Creek, Alaska. When Corey moves away, she makes Kyra a promise that she will return. But before Corey can come back for her scheduled vacation, Kyra dies. Now when Corey returns, it will be for a funeral. But it's not what she's expecting. Lost is keeping secrets. What didn't I like about this one? The first thing I can say I didn't like about this one is there are unanswered questions. If you are a watcher of this channel, you know that typically I love unanswered questions. But this book, it feels like they were an accident. Like those unanswered questions were completely forgotten about. I felt like Corey forgot about them. The author forgot about them. And we were supposed to forget them. It's almost like we were playing around with supernatural elements, but all that was tossed aside because in the end, we just meant to be telling a contemporary story. It got wrapped up in this pretty little contemporary package, and we were supposed to forget about all the supernatural stuff. It didn't feel like the story we started off telling, and it was incredibly frustrating. The second thing I can say I didn't like about this one, Corey, I wanted to like you. Most of the time I kind of did, but I hated the way she treated Kyra. I hated reading about the promises she made and broke. Honestly, I disliked her, and I disliked feeling that sting of betrayal that she brought to the story. Third thing I can say I didn't like about this one. What was with the script-like pages? I almost lumped this in with the unanswered questions, but for those, the unanswered questions, I was talking about plot points that were never explored, like Aaron's cabin, for instance. In this case, I'm talking about a formatting choice. I expected this to be explained. I had this whole cool idea in my head that it's something to do with like Kyra was writing this whole thing, but nothing was ever addressed. It never came back to those. We never talked about them again, which leads me to the question, what was with the script-like pages? Seriously, what were they for? Because I don't get it. So what did I like about this story? Kyra. It's weird to say because Kyra is dead when the story begins, so how is she my favorite character? but she's a bipolar character who happens to be pansexual. She's incredibly well written. She's deep. Unpopular opinion coming. I liked the way the letters and the notes sort of revealed what Kyra was thinking and feeling. I kind of liked the way she was written, and a lot of people don't, but I liked the way she was written. Second thing I liked about this one is I can say that it was well written. That is to say that it's highly readable. The language and the writing style, they keep you moving along. In fact, I finished the book incredibly quickly. I was done with it before I realized I kind of had problems with it. It definitely lends itself to fast, immersive reading. Third thing I can say I liked about this one is it is emotional. This one tapped into emotions in the reader for sure. There's the fear of the town and what they might be hiding. You get the love for Kyra and her struggle, the idea of being seen that comes from Sam. Generally, this one is going to make you feel some good emotions. Who do I think should read this one? If you're a fan of small town stories, this one takes place in a small town in Alaska. Honestly, it sort of reminds me of a vibe you'd get from like a Stephen King taking place in rural Maine. It's small town, but something is off about it, and you know that from the beginning. If that sounds like your vibe, you might like this one. My rating? I really struggled with what to rate this one, but I landed on 3 stars. This one tries to be mystery thriller, but it really sits in contemporary at the end of the day. It's problematic, sort of, but if you're coming into it knowing that it's contemporary, it's not as problematic. So in the end, I'm going to give it 3 stars, but remind you that that's a 3-star rating for a contemporary story. So 3 stars for Before I Let Go by Marieke Nijkamp. The 5th book I read for the month of June was Odriel's Heirs by Hayley, Reese, Chow. This was independently published in 2020. It is a young adult age category fantasy novel, and it is 178 pages. Your synopsis. Kaya is the Dragonair, wielding the power of flame. It's a power that causes fear from her own people and leaves her cast out from society. But when a necromancer's undead begins to terrify the land, Kaya will need to join the battle. Can Kaya learn to harness her gifts and find her confidence? What didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing is this one does have some instances of telling instead of showing. It's only a few times, and I just wished we'd slowed down and taken time to experience things like battles with Kaya. It would have made her a stronger character I could connect to more. The second thing I can say you might not like about this one is that there are a lot of events very quickly. This one covers a lot of major events. I'm still a little shocked at how many things happened to Kaya in under 200 pages. It gives this one almost a rushed feeling. The third thing I can say I didn't particularly like about this one is the character development. Not really from Kaya, I'll get to her in a minute, but our secondary characters needed a little bit more development. I felt like everyone else besides Kaya is a huge mystery right now, and I'd like to know a little bit more about them. So what did I like about this one? Kaya. She is the perfect chosen one right from the beginning of this book. I'm a fan of the chosen one trope, but I also love seeing tropes twisted and played with as much as possible. This book definitely has Kaya fighting back against being that chosen one. She fails at it. She's ostracized for it. It was just twists that I liked all the way through. Well done. Second thing I liked about this one is enemies to lovers. Light. I say light because even when they were declaring themselves enemies, I saw right through them. These two are cute, and that side romance works all the way through. The third thing I can say I liked about this one is the fantasy creatures. We already know that I'm a sucker for dragons. Add in a large cat, and I was just sold on these fantasy creatures. The animals in this one, they just worked for me. They were great. Who do I think should read this one? If you're a fantasy fan who likes immersive worlds you can get lost in, you should probably try this one. If you're a reader who enjoys when tropes are twisted and played with just a little bit and put into something new, I think you're going to like the fact that we play with Chosen One and Enemies to Lovers in this one. My rating? I gave this one 3 stars. It's a good fantasy story that's going to appeal to a lot of fantasy readers, especially ones who like to be immersed in a whole new world. 3 stars for Odriel's Heirs by Hayley, Reese, Chow. Okay, that is it for me and the first 5 books I read in the month of June. Thank you for being here to let me talk about the books that helped me escape reality for a little while at the beginning of this month. If you are still here, please drop a comment to let me know. Hit subscribe and tap that little bell so you know when I'm back. Keep plotting the path to your own dreams, and I will see you next time. Bye! Regular watchers of this channel will already know this, but I do book reviews every time I've read 5 books. You should know that I don't read just one specific age category or genre. I'm actually a reader of pretty much anything. So I will make sure to tell you what age category, what genre it is, and more importantly, what kind of readers I think will love the book that I'm reviewing. I do use a 5-star rating system to review all my books, so I'd like to take a quick second to tell you about that system. 5-star ratings are reserved for books that I absolutely love, that I think transcend genre. In other words, you might love this one even if you don't normally read the genre it's written in. 4-star books, on the other hand, are books that I absolutely love and think are great books, but they're more specific to the genre they are written for. 3-star ratings are for books that I think are good books, but they have a really niche audience. You might not love this one, even if you normally read this genre. 2-star ratings are the ratings I reserve for books that I think are problematic. I do try to explain some of the problems in the what I didn't love section so that you know if it's the kind of thing that would really bother you or not. 1-star rating, on the other hand, are reserved for books that I honestly didn't enjoy and can't recommend. They're just not for me.